I very nearly abandoned this project early on because I couldn't find a way to display PNG files in Jitter without them looking like they were compressed. I'm sure there are some folks out there who've had got a better solution to this than me, but I found that if you put a PNG file into a jit.qt movie object, it displays in pixel perfect resolution, and everything you're seeing in the game are PNG files. That's the way the game is displayed to the player. Here's one, for example, mob_1A1, which is the first mob and its first frame of animation, and it looks like this, zoomed in. So it's a very, very, very small file size. I think it's 2 kilobytes, so it's almost unreadably small. It's ever so small, and because you can sort of drag the jitter window to be whatever size you want, I can display them in a perfectly serviceable size here. You can see everything you're seeing there. What you're seeing here is 2 frames or 2 PNG files. So one PNG file where the little monster fella is there. Well, I can't really pause it, and then another file where he's 1 pixel higher, which gives this sort of view of him bobbing up and down. And if I go into the visuals, that should be viewable in, if it's front tile. Let's have a peek. Here we go. So as the game starts, every single one of the mobs is already animating and only gets displayed when that particular tile is triggered. So they're already running their animation. You can see I'm sending read space mob_1B1 immediately followed by 1B2, which shows the mob in his particular animation. The super useful file object on top of this is the jit.alphablend object, which allows you to use the alpha layer, which is a transparency layer on an image, to stack PNGs on top of each other, which means because of this you can see this cascade down of different objects, that I'm able to overlay images. So if I go along, the mob that you're seeing is on top of the background PNG. That's not one PNG you're seeing. So there's 2 things going on there, which means if I kill this mob, when he updates, the background doesn't change or anything like that, which is incredibly useful. The images are nothing to speak of. I am not very visually artistic, so they're all really, really straightforward. The most cumbersome and potentially silliest thing of this whole project are the grass tiles, and I'm just going to talk about those very briefly. They are, I think it's 64 by 64 tiles, pixel wide tiles of basically grass that I made in I made everything in Paintbrush, which is a Mac version of Paint, basically. This was using the spray tool, and I made I did some variations, so I only made actually a quarter of these and then rotated them, but 256 different variations of grass, which, as you can imagine, was super exciting. When the patch is loaded, if I go to back tile, which is where the grass is stored, another table is generated called table back tile, and similarly to before, it loads a quarter at a time for speed. A number is loaded from 1 to 256, and then I've got a sprint F object and a little dollar operation. So whenever you land on that particular on a particular tile, it sends your location and reads it from a table, and it will be one of 256 versions of that grass. Occasionally, I do still get it, so it will seed the same looking grass next to each other. So if you hit right and then left again, it would look like you hadn't moved, which is really frustrating. I'm sure there's an easy way to get around that, but it got to the stage in the project where I couldn't be bothered to do anything. But that's basically how the visuals work here. It's a jit.qt movie object, and I'm basically sending messages, read whatever.png into there, and it's sending it over the top. And then I've got priority in terms of layers. So for example, the very, very top layer, the front one you see is the title screen here. So everything's already loaded behind it. As soon as I hit spacebar, this sends a blank object, a blank message. In fact, if I click this, it should work. There we go. And basically, blank is just a completely transparent PNG file. So there is a PNG file still here on top of this, but it's blank, which means you can see the grass underneath. And that's how I'm able to get, there's a little animation at the end when you go onto the exit tile and hit spacebar, and it looks like well, it doesn't really look like this, but it's supposed to look like if I can find it looks like one of these, depending on whether you exit right, up, down. And then what happens is when you hit spacebar to exit, you hear a creak, and a black tile or sort of little PNG is loaded over this, so it looks like this becomes a hole, and then you can exit. So there's a tiny little bit of animation in there, but that's basically how I've done the visuals here, which works surprisingly effectively. The only downside is if I wanted to run this on a Windows machine, I found this out thanks to the really helpful folks on the Macs Facebook group, and if you are interested in this software, I would strongly recommend joining that group. I mean, I don't post barely at all, but the resources and help that some people provide is invaluable, and it's a really, really good community for that. So I found out from some really helpful folks on there that the jit.qt.movie object doesn't work on Windows because Windows no longer uses QuickTime. I'm not really sure whether it doesn't use it or whether it's just it's not safe to use it anymore because it's not recommended. Because it's not being supported by Windows, by Mac for Windows or something like that. So there is a variation you can use here that uses the DirectX thing to make that work, but that would also be an option. But yeah, this is basically it. And just before I finish, I'll reiterate that none of this was a tutorial. It's basically for me, so I can go back in this and realize what on earth's going on with my patch if I re-enter it in another point. And one other thing I need to mention is I don't route my patch cables unless I absolutely have to, because I've got a background in Pure Data and I really do not like the look of routed patch cables. I prefer spaghetti mess like this, which drives a lot of people insane, so sorry about that. If you stuck it to the end of this video, thanks for watching. If this has been useful, then that's amazing, but I basically wanted to just talk about this project because I spent a few months on it and I'm really happy with how it turned out, even though it's not particularly exciting in the grand scheme of things. But cool. So Max is the coolest piece of software ever, and I'm going to try and make Space Invaders next. Thanks very much for watching.